What if I told you that a simple penny from your pocket, something most people ignore every single day, could quietly hold a story worth far more than 1 cent, and in some rare cases, even catch the attention of serious collectors willing to pay real money? Today, we are uncovering the mystery behind the 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but hides a fascinating chapter of American history. The 1967 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most interesting periods in U.S. coinage. At a time when the country was facing a coin shortage, the United States Mint made a bold and unusual decision that changed how coins were produced for several years. And that decision is exactly why this penny exists the way it does. To understand the 1967 penny, we need to go back to the mid-1960s. During this time, the United States was experiencing a major coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, especially silver ones, because the value of metal was starting to rise. This caused everyday coins to disappear from circulation, creating a problem for businesses and the economy. To fix this issue, the U.S. government stepped in and passed the Coinage Act of 1965. This law made several important changes. One of the most surprising changes was the removal of mint marks from coins. Normally, coins would have a small letter indicating where they were made, like D for Denver or S for San Francisco. But from 1965 through 1967, mint marks were completely removed to discourage collectors from hoarding coins based on where they were produced. So when you look at a 1967 Lincoln penny and notice there's no mint mark, that's not a mistake. It was done on purpose. Every 1967 penny, no matter where it was made, has no mint mark at all. The design of the 1967 Lincoln penny follows the classic look that had already been in use for decades. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design created by Victor David Brenner back in 1909. This was the first time a real person appeared on a regular US coin, marking an important shift in American coin design. On the back of the coin, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, a small detail that many people miss. The coin itself is made mostly of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It has a reddish-brown color when new, but over time, it can turn brown due to oxidation. Collectors often categorize these pennies as red, red-brown, or brown, depending on how much original color remains. Now, here's where things get interesting. Even though the 1967 penny was produced in very large numbers, and most of them are still worth only a few cents, certain versions of this coin can be surprisingly valuable. The value depends on condition, color, and especially errors. One of the most sought-after types is the 1967 penny in pristine, uncirculated condition with full red color. These coins are graded by professional services on a scale from 1 to 70. Coins that reach grades like MS65, MS66, or even higher can sell for significantly more than face value. For example, a 1967 Lincoln penny graded MS67 with full red color has been known to sell for hundreds of dollars at auction. In extremely rare cases, coins that reach even higher grades can bring in over $1,000, simply because they are so well preserved and difficult to find in that condition. But condition is only part of the story. Errors are where things really start to excite collectors. Some 1967 pennies have been discovered with double die errors. This means that during the minting process, the design was accidentally stamped twice, slightly misaligned, creating a visible doubling effect on the letters or numbers. These errors can be subtle, but under magnification, they become clear. Another type of error to look for is off-center strikes. This happens when the coin blank isn't properly aligned during the strike, resulting in part of the design missing. The more dramatic the off-center error, the more valuable the coin can be. There are also clipped planchet errors, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a mistake in cutting the metal blanks. These unusual shapes immediately catch the eye and can add significant value. Because of these possibilities, collectors often go through rolls of pennies, carefully examining each coin, hoping to find one of these rare variations hidden among common pieces. So how can you tell if your 1967 penny is valuable? First, take a close look at the condition. If the coin still has a bright, red shine and very few marks, it may be worth having it evaluated. Coins that look almost brand new, even after decades, are always more desirable. Next, check for errors. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the date, the word liberty, and the phrase "In God we trust." Look for any signs of doubling or unusual shapes. Also, weigh the coin if possible. A standard 1967 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If the weight is significantly off, it could indicate an error or alteration. When it comes to authenticity, it's important to be cautious. While 1967 pennies are not commonly counterfeited due to their relatively low value, altered coins do exist. Some people may try to modify a coin to make it appear like it has an error. This is why professional grading services are trusted by serious collectors. They can verify whether a coin is genuine and assign it an official grade. Here's a fun detail that surprises many people. During the years when mint marks were removed, the US Mint also stopped producing proof coins for collectors. Instead, they released special mint sets. The 1967 Special Mint set includes higher quality versions of coins, including the Lincoln penny, with a more polished appearance than regular circulation coins. These can also carry extra value, especially if they remain in their original packaging. Another interesting fact is that billions of 1967 pennies were produced. Despite this massive number, finding one in perfect condition today is much harder than you might think. Most of these coins were heavily used in everyday transactions, which means they picked up scratches, wear, and discoloration over time. Collectors love the 1967 Lincoln penny not because it is the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents a unique moment in history. It's a coin that reflects a time when the government took unusual steps to solve a national problem. It's also a reminder that even the most common objects can have hidden stories and unexpected value. For beginners, this coin is often one of the first they start searching for. It's affordable, easy to find, and offers a chance to learn about grading, errors, and the basics of coin collecting. For experienced collectors, high-grade examples and error varieties provide a real challenge and an opportunity to own something special. There's also a certain excitement in knowing that these coins are still out there. They're in old jars, forgotten drawers, and even in circulation today. That means anyone, anywhere, could come across one. Imagine going through your spare change and spotting a 1967 penny. At first, it looks like nothing special. But then you notice the shine, the sharp details, or maybe a slight doubling in the letters. That moment of discovery is what makes coin collecting so addictive. And it's not just about money. It's about history, curiosity, and the thrill of the hunt. The 1967 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny teaches us an important lesson. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it takes a closer look, a bit of knowledge, and a willingness to explore what others overlook. So the next time you see a penny, don't just toss it aside. Take a second look. Because hidden in plain sight, there might be a small piece of history waiting to be discovered, and maybe even a coin that's worth far more than 1 cent retry. What if I told you that a tiny copper coin, something most people overlook every day, could quietly hold far more value than its face suggests? A single penny, minted decades ago, sitting unnoticed in a jar or drawer, might actually be a small piece of history, and possibly worth far more than 1 cent. Today, we are diving into the story of the 1968 S-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries a fascinating background, subtle details, and a place in the hearts of collectors. The 1968 S Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 1968, the coin had already been in circulation for nearly 60 years, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in American history. But something important changed in the years just before 1968, and it directly impacted this penny. From 1965 to 1967, the United States Mint removed mint marks from coins entirely. This was done to discourage collectors from hoarding coins during a national coin shortage. But in 1968, mint marks were officially brought back. That's where the S comes in. The S on the 1968 penny tells us it was minted in San Francisco, a facility that would soon become known mainly for producing proof coins rather than regular circulation coins. So when you hold a 1968 S Lincoln penny, you're not just holding a coin from that year. You're holding one of the first coins to bring back mint marks after a short but important break in US coin history. Now let's talk about what this coin actually looks like. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces to the right, with the word Liberty to his left, the date 1968 to his right, and the motto In God We Trust arching above his head. Just below the date, you'll find the small but crucial S Mint mark. On the reverse side, The design features the Lincoln Memorial, which had been introduced in 1959 to replace the earlier wheat years design. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a small detail that many people miss entirely. The coin itself is made primarily of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and has that classic reddish-brown appearance when it's well preserved. At first glance, nothing about this coin screams rarity. Millions of pennies were made in 1968, including those from San Francisco. But this is where things get interesting. The true value and rarity of the 1968 Lincoln penny often depend on two major factors: condition and type. There are actually two main versions of the 1968 penny. One is the regular circulation strike, and the other is the proof coin. Proof coins are specially made for collectors using polished dies and planchets, giving them a mirror-like finish and sharper details. The 1968 proof penny was one of the earliest proof coins produced after the San Francisco Mint resumed proof coin production. These proof coins were not meant for everyday use. They were sold directly to collectors, usually in special sets. Now here's where the story gets even more intriguing. Among the 1968 proof pennies, there is a rare variety known as the no-S proof penny. This is exactly what it sounds like, a proof coin that was struck without the S mint mark. Somehow, during production, a small number of proof pennies were made using a die that did not have the mint mark punched into it. This error was not supposed to happen. Proof coins are carefully inspected and produced with great attention to detail. So when a proof coin is missing its mint mark, it becomes extremely desirable to collectors. These no-S proof pennies are among the most valuable Lincoln cents ever made. In some cases, they have sold for tens of thousands of dollars at auction. The rarity comes from the fact that only a very small number of these error coins exist. Even regular 1968 proof pennies, with a mint mark, can be valuable if they are in perfect condition. Coins graded as PR69 or PR70, meaning near perfect or flawless, can sell for significantly more than their original cost. For regular circulation 1968 pennies, the value is usually modest unless the coin is in exceptional condition or has a noticeable error. Uncirculated examples with strong red coloring, often labeled as red by grading services, can be worth more than typical worn coins. Now you might be wondering how to tell if you have a valuable version of this coin. First, check for the mint mark. Look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a clear S, then you have a San Francisco Mint coin. If you're examining a proof coin and there is no S, that could be a major discovery. Next, consider the finish. Proof coins have a very distinct appearance. The background fields are highly reflective, almost like a mirror, while the raised details appear frosted. If your coin has this mirror-like quality, it may be a proof. Condition is also critical. Coins with scratches, discoloration, or heavy wear will be worth less than those that look nearly perfect. Collectors pay a premium for coins that appear as close to new as possible. Authenticity is another important factor. Because valuable coins attract attention, there are sometimes altered or counterfeit pieces in the market. For example, someone might try to remove a mint mark from a regular proof coin to make it look like a rare no-S variety. To protect yourself, it's always a good idea to have potentially valuable coins examined by a professional grading service. These organizations can authenticate the coin and assign it a grade, which helps determine its value. Now let's talk about some real-world examples. Over the years, genuine 1968 no-S proof pennies have sold for impressive amounts. In some auctions, these coins have reached prices well into 5 figures, depending on their condition. Even standard 1968 proof pennies in top grades can sell for several $100s. Regular circulation coins usually don't reach those levels, but high-grade examples can still be appealing to collectors. A well-preserved 1968 penny with full red color might sell for a noticeable premium compared to an average circulated coin. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. The return of the mint mark in 1968 wasn't just a small design change. It marked a shift back to normalcy after a period of uncertainty in the US coin system. For collectors at the time, it was a big deal, and many began paying closer attention to mint marks again. Another interesting fact is that the San Francisco Mint transitioned away from producing large numbers of circulation coins after this period. Today, it is primarily known for producing proof and special collector coins. That gives the 1968 penny an added layer of historical importance, as it sits right at the edge of that transition. Collectors love the 1968 Lincoln penny for several reasons. It connects to a unique moment in minting history. It includes both common and extremely rare varieties, and it offers something for collectors at every level. Whether someone is just starting out or has been collecting for decades, this coin has a place in their collection. There's also the thrill of the hunt. The idea that a rare no-S-proof penny could still be out there, hidden in an old collection or forgotten box, keeps people searching. It's that sense of possibility that makes coin collecting so exciting. Even beyond its potential value, the coin represents a piece of American history. It reflects the design traditions of the Lincoln cent series, the operations of the U.S. Mint, and the changes that took place during the late 1960s. So the next time you come across a penny from 1968 with a small S beneath the date, take a closer look. It might just be an ordinary coin, or it might be something far more interesting. Because sometimes, the smallest objects carry the biggest stories. And in the case of the 1968 Lincoln penny, that story is still being discovered, one coin at a time. What if a single penny, something you might ignore or even leave on the ground, could quietly be worth far more than its face value, and you might already have one without even knowing it? Today, we are looking at a small copper coin with a big story, the 1969 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, and why collectors still search for it decades later. The 1969 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint, specifically at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see a small D Mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary penny you've probably seen thousands of times. But like many coins from this era, its real value isn't just in its metal. It's in its history, its subtle details, and the possibility of rare variations that can turn a simple coin into a collector's prize. To understand why this coin matters, we have to go back to the late 1960s. America was going through a time of major change. The space race was at its peak, the Vietnam War was ongoing, and in 1969, humans would take their first steps on the moon. During all of this, the US Mint continued producing everyday coins for circulation, including the Lincoln cent, which had been in use since 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1969, the composition of the penny had already changed a few years earlier. Since 1962, pennies were made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gave the coin its familiar reddish-brown color and solid feel. The 1969 D penny follows this same composition, weighing about 3.11 grams. It was struck in massive numbers, with over 4 billion coins produced at the Denver Mint alone. That number might make it sound like this coin is extremely common, and in many ways, it is, but that's not the whole story. The design of the 1969 D Lincoln penny is simple but iconic. On the front, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and the date 1969 appears to the right. Just below the date is the small D Mint mark. The phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. On the back, the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, which had been introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. Now here's where things get interesting. While most 1969 D pennies are common, collectors are always searching for coins with unusual characteristics. These can include minting errors, unusual coloration, or coins that have been preserved in exceptional condition. One of the most talked about variations related to this year is the 1969 double die penny, but it's important to understand that the famous double die version does not carry a D Mint mark. That rare and valuable variety was produced in Philadelphia. However, the attention around that era has caused many people to take a closer look at all 1969 pennies, including those from Denver. So what makes a 1969 D penny valuable? The answer often comes down to condition. Coins that have never been used in circulation, known as uncirculated coins, can be worth significantly more than worn examples. A typical circulated 1969 D penny might only be worth a few cents. But in higher grades, especially those graded by professional services as Mint State 65 or higher, the value can rise to several dollars or even more. In rare cases, if a 1969 D penny is found with exceptional luster, sharp details, and no visible wear, collectors may pay a premium. Coins graded at the very top levels, such as Mint State 67, can sometimes sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on demand. While this may not sound like life-changing money, it's a huge jump from just 1 cent. There have been auction examples where high-grade 1969 D pennies have sold for impressive amounts. For instance, coins certified in near-perfect condition by grading companies like PCGS or NGC have reached prices well above typical expectations for a common-date penny. These sales show that even coins produced in the billions can still hold surprising value when they are preserved in extraordinary condition. Of course, with any collectible, there's always the question of authenticity. If you think you found a valuable 1969 penny, it's important to check a few key details. First, look for the mint mark. A genuine 1969 D penny will have a clearly defined D below the date. Be cautious of coins that appear altered, as some people have tried to add or remove mint marks to create the illusion of rarity. Next, examine the surface of the coin. Authentic coins should show consistent wear patterns if they've been circulated, or smooth, original luster if they are uncirculated. Watch out for unusual textures, tool marks, or signs that the coin has been tampered with. If you suspect your coin might be valuable, it's always a good idea to have it evaluated by a professional grading service. Another important factor is color. Collectors often classify copper coins like the 1969 D penny into three categories: red, red-brown, and brown. Red coins, which still have most of their original copper color, are typically more valuable than darker, fully brown coins. This is because maintaining that bright red color over decades is rare, especially if the coin has been exposed to air and handling. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. The Lincoln Memorial design on the back of these pennies was used for exactly 50 years, from 1959 to 2008. That means the 1969 D penny is part of a long-running design era that many Americans grew up with. It's a small piece of everyday history that connects generations. Another interesting fact is that during the late 1960s, the US Mint was under pressure to produce large quantities of coins due to a nationwide coin shortage earlier in the decade. This led to high production numbers and sometimes less attention to detail, which is why collectors carefully examine coins from this period for any unusual features or errors. Despite its common appearance, the 1969 D Lincoln penny holds a special place in the world of coin collecting. It represents a time when coins were still made primarily of copper, before the composition changed in 1982 to include more zinc. For many collectors, this makes older pennies feel more substantial and historically significant. Collectors love this coin not because it is rare in general, but because it offers opportunity. It's the kind of coin you might actually find in an old jar, a drawer, or a forgotten collection. And that possibility, the idea that something valuable could be hiding in plain sight, is what keeps people searching. It also serves as a reminder that value isn't always obvious. Two coins that look almost identical can have completely different worth depending on their condition, color, and subtle details. This encourages collectors to slow down, pay attention, and learn the small differences that can make a big impact. For beginners, the 1969 D penny is a great entry point into coin collecting. It's affordable, widely available, and easy to study. For experienced collectors, it's a challenge to find the best possible example, one that stands out among billions of others. So the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look. Check the date, find the mint mark, and notice the details. That small coin in your hand might not just be spare change. It could be a piece of history, a collector's item, or the start of a new hobby. And who knows? Maybe the next time you hear someone say a penny isn't worth picking up, you'll remember that sometimes the smallest coins can tell the biggest stories. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1971, something most people would ignore or even spend without thinking, could actually be worth far more than its face value? Not because it looks flashy, not because it's made of gold, but because of a tiny detail that most people never notice. And that detail could be sitting quietly in your pocket right now. Today, we are talking about the 1971 S Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance but carries a fascinating story, a unique identity, and in some cases, surprising value. The 1971 S Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series that first began in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1971, this coin had already been in circulation for over 60 years, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in American history. The S Mint mark tells us that this particular coin was struck at the San Francisco Mint, one of the key facilities responsible for producing high-quality coins, especially proof coins meant for collectors. Now, 1971 was not just another random year. It was a time when the United States was going through major economic and social changes. The country was dealing with inflation, the Vietnam War was still ongoing, and the value of coins themselves was being reconsidered. In fact, just a few years earlier, In 1965, the US government had removed silver from most circulating coins due to rising metal prices. By 1971, copper coins like the Lincoln penny were still being produced in large quantities, but the focus on collector coins was growing stronger. The San Francisco Mint played a special role in this. Unlike Philadelphia or Denver, which mainly produced coins for everyday circulation, San Francisco became known for producing proof coins. These are specially made coins with a mirror-like finish, struck with extra care using polished dies and planchets. The 1971's Lincoln penny was primarily issued as a proof coin, meaning it was never intended for general circulation. It was made for collectors who appreciated detail, shine, and precision. Let's talk about what makes this coin unique. The 1971's penny is made mostly of copper, about 95%, with the remaining 5% made up of zinc and tin. It has that classic reddish color that many collectors love, especially when the coin is in pristine condition. Over time, this color can fade into brown, depending on how the coin has been stored. On the front, or obverse, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1971. Just below the date, you'll find the small but important S mint mark, indicating San Francisco. On the back, or reverse, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, which is a remarkable detail for such a small coin. But here's where things get interesting. Not all 1971's pennies are the same. Some of them have unique variations and errors that can make them much more valuable than others. One of the most talked about varieties is the 1971's double die obverse. In this version, certain parts of the lettering, especially Liberty and In God We Trust, appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. This doubling is not always easy to see with the naked eye, but under magnification, it becomes clear. Another important factor is the finish of the coin. Proof coins from 1971's can come in two main types, standard proof and deep cameo. A deep cameo proof has a strong contrast between the frosted design and the mirror-like background. These coins are highly sought after because of their striking visual appeal. The stronger the contrast, the more desirable the coin. Now, you might be wondering, how much is this coin actually worth? The answer depends on several factors, including condition, color, and whether it has any special features or errors. A regular 1971's proof penny in average condition might only be worth a few dollars. However, if it's in perfect condition, graded as PR70 by professional grading services, its value can jump significantly. Coins with the deep cameo finish are even more valuable. A 1971's deep cameo proof penny in top condition can sell for over $100, sometimes even more depending on demand. And if you happen to find a double die version in excellent condition, the value can increase even further. Some of these rare varieties have sold for several $100s at auction. There have been real cases where collectors were surprised by the value of what they thought was just an ordinary penny. For example, a high-grade 1971's proof penny with strong cameo contrast once sold for over $200. While this might not sound like life-changing money, it's a huge jump from a coin that originally cost just 1 cent. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1971's penny? First, check for the mint mark. Look below the date for the small s. If it's not there, then it's not from San Francisco. Next, examine the coin surface. A proof coin will have a very shiny, mirror-like background and sharp details. If your coin looks dull or worn, it's likely been circulated or improperly stored. You should also look for signs of doubling in the lettering. This might require a magnifying glass or a coin loop. Pay close attention to the words Liberty and In God We Trust. If the letters appear slightly duplicated or shadowed, you might have a double die variety. Another important step is to check the color. Collectors classify copper coins into 3 categories: red, red-brown, and brown. Red coins are the most valuable because they retain their original color. Brown coins are less valuable but can still be collectible if they are in good condition. Be careful when handling your coin. Always hold it by the edges and avoid touching the surface. Even a small fingerprint can reduce its value. If you believe you have a high-quality or rare coin, consider having it professionally graded by a reputable service. This not only confirms its authenticity but also gives it a standardized value in the collector market. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1971 penny. For instance, even though it was primarily made as a proof coin, some of these coins have ended up in circulation over the years. This usually happens when collectors break open proof sets, or when coins are accidentally mixed into regular coin rolls. Another interesting detail is how the quality of proof coins has changed over time. In the early 1970s, the San Francisco Mint was still refining its proof-making process. This means that not all 1971's proof coins have the same level of finish. Some have weaker contrast, while others display stunning deep cameo effects. This variation adds another layer of interest for collectors. Collectors love the 1971's Lincoln penny for several reasons. It represents a specific moment in US minting history, when proof coins were becoming more popular and more refined. It also offers a range of variations, from standard proofs to deep cameo examples and even error coins like double dies. This variety makes it an exciting coin to search for and collect. There's also something deeply satisfying about finding value in something so small and overlooked. The idea that a simple penny, something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up, could be worth hundreds of dollars is both surprising and inspiring. It reminds us that value is not always obvious and that sometimes, the smallest details can make the biggest difference. As you go through your coins, whether they're in a jar, a drawer, or your pocket, take a moment to look a little closer. That 1971's penny might not just be spare change. It could be a small piece of history, a collectible item, or even a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. And here's the thought to leave you with. How many other coins, just like this one, are sitting unnoticed in homes across the country? How many stories, how many rare details, how many valuable pieces of history are hiding in plain sight? The next time you see a penny, don't just pass it by, because you never know which one might change the way you see money forever. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1978, something you might have ignored in your pocket or even thrown into a jar, could quietly hold more value than you ever imagined? Not thousands, not millions, but enough to make collectors stop, look twice, and sometimes pay far more than 1 cent. The real question is, how do you know if your 1978 Lincoln penny is just ordinary, or something worth holding onto? The 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is one of those coins that blends into everyday life so well that most people never think twice about it. At first glance, it looks like any other penny. It has Abraham Lincoln on the front, the familiar wheat-free design that replaced the earlier wheat pennies decades before, and a simple 1 cent on the back. But behind that simplicity lies a story tied to American history, mass production, and the small details that collectors obsess over. This coin was part of the Lincoln Memorial Cent Series, which began in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By 1978, the United States was deep into a period of high coin production. The economy was active, inflation was rising, and the demand for coins in everyday transactions was strong. That year, the US Mint produced billions of pennies, making the 1978 issue one of the most common coins ever made. The no mint mark version specifically means it was struck in Philadelphia, which at the time did not place a mint mark on pennies. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though billions were made, not all 1978 pennies are equal. Most are worth only face value or slightly more, but certain examples stand out because of their condition, color, or rare minting errors. And that's where collectors start paying attention. The coin itself is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This composition gives it that rich reddish-brown color when new. Over time, depending on how it's stored and handled, the color can change. Collectors categorize these pennies into 3 color groups: red, red-brown, and brown. A fully red coin, especially one that looks almost untouched, can be significantly more valuable than a dark brown one that has been in circulation for decades. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right, the date 1978. Below the date, there is no mint mark, which confirms it was made in Philadelphia. The phrase "In God We Trust" arches over the top. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with United States of America above it and 1 cent below. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people miss entirely. So if billions were made, why would anyone care about a 1978 penny? The answer lies in condition and errors. Coins that were never circulated, meaning they were never used in everyday transactions, can retain their original shine and detail. These are graded by professionals on a scale, and the highest grades can bring surprisingly strong prices. For example, a 1978 no-mint mark penny in average circulated condition might be worth just 1 or 2 cents, but a high-grade, uncirculated example with full red color can sell for several dollars, sometimes even reaching into the tens of dollars. In rare cases, coins graded at the very top of the scale, nearly perfect, have sold for over $100 at auction. That's a huge jump from a single cent. Then there are errors, which are like hidden surprises. During the minting process, mistakes can happen. These include double strikes, off-center strikes, or doubling in the lettering. A 1978 penny with a noticeable error can attract serious attention from collectors. For instance, a double die error, where the text appears slightly duplicated, can significantly increase the coin's value. These are not common, and that rarity is exactly what drives demand. There have been auction listings and collector sales where error coins from 1978 have sold for far more than standard examples. While not every error coin is worth a fortune, even minor errors can turn a 1-cent coin into something worth collecting. Now you might be wondering, how do you tell if your 1978 penny is real or valuable? First, check the date and make sure it clearly reads 1978. Then look under the date. If there is no letter, it's from Philadelphia. If you see a small d, it's from Denver, which is also common. Next, examine the color. A bright, reddish coin is usually more desirable than a dull brown one. After that, pay close attention to the details. Look at the lettering, Lincoln's face, and the memorial on the back. Are the lines sharp and clear, or worn down and faded? Sharp details usually mean the coin is in better condition. You can also use a magnifying glass to check for doubling or unusual features that might indicate an error. Weight can also help verify authenticity. A standard 1978 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly off, that could be a sign of damage or something unusual, though not necessarily valuable. One of the most surprising facts about the 1978 penny is just how many people overlook it. Because it's so common, it often gets ignored in favor of older coins. But collectors know that even common coins can have uncommon versions. It's not always about age, it's about condition and uniqueness. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design remained in use until 2008, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coin history. That means the 1978 penny is part of a much larger story, connecting decades of American life through a single, simple design. Collectors today love the 1978 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in general, but because it represents the idea that value can hide in plain sight. It's a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can have layers of meaning and potential worth. For beginners, it's also an accessible entry point into coin collecting. You don't need a huge budget or years of experience to start looking through your change. A simple penny can spark curiosity, leading to a deeper interest in history, design, and the small details that make each coin unique. And for experienced collectors, the challenge is in finding that perfect example. A flawless 1978 red penny, untouched by time, is much harder to find than you might think. That challenge keeps the hunt exciting. So the next time you come across a penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the date. Notice the color. Look for anything unusual. Because hidden among billions of ordinary coins, there's always the chance that one stands out. And that's the real story of the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. It's not just about what it is, but what it could be. A simple coin, a piece of history, and maybe, just maybe, a small treasure waiting to be discovered. Now think about this. How many pennies have passed through your hands without a second glance? And how many of them might have had a story you never noticed? What if the next time you reach into your pocket, that simple penny staring back at you is hiding a story, and possibly more value than you ever imagined? Most people overlook it. They spend it without thinking. But the 1981 Lincoln penny with no mint mark might be one of those quiet coins that rewards the curious eye. At first glance, the 1981 Lincoln penny looks like any other 1-cent coin. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been part of American currency since 1909. On the back, you'll see the classic wheat-free design introduced in 1959, featuring the Lincoln Memorial. It feels ordinary. It looks ordinary. And that is exactly what makes it so interesting. This coin was produced in a year that marked the end of an era in American coinage. By 1981, The United States Mint was preparing for a major change. Rising copper prices were making it expensive to produce pennies the old way. The government needed a cheaper alternative, and that decision would come into full effect in 1982. But 1981 stands right on the edge of that transition, making its pennies part of the final chapter of traditional copper coinage. Now, here's where things get more intriguing. When you hear "no mint mark," it doesn't mean the coin is missing something by accident. It actually tells you exactly where it was made. Coins without a mint mark from this time period were struck in Philadelphia, the original home of the United States Mint. Unlike today, where even Philadelphia coins often carry a P, back then many coins from that mint simply had no mark at all. So your 1981 penny with no mint mark comes from Philadelphia, and that alone gives it a clear identity. But the story doesn't stop there. In 1981, pennies were made primarily of 95% copper, with a small amount of zinc mixed in. This gives them a slightly heavier feel compared to pennies made after 1982, which switched to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. If you were to hold a 1981 penny and compare it to a modern penny, you might not notice the difference right away. But if you weigh them, the older coin comes in at about 3.11 grams, while newer ones are lighter, around 2.5 grams. That small difference represents a big shift in materials and cost-saving decisions. The design itself is rich with symbolism. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's profile faces right, calm and steady. Above his head, the word liberty stands as a reminder of American values. The date, 1981, sits clearly to the right, and just beneath it, you'll notice the absence of a mint mark. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial is shown in detail, and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the building. Above it reads United States of America, and below, 1 cent. But what makes this coin more than just another penny? Why do collectors even talk about it? The answer lies in a combination of timing, condition, and subtle variations. While millions of 1981 pennies were produced, not all of them are equal. In fact, most of the pennies you'll find in circulation are heavily worn. They've passed through countless hands, cash registers, and pockets over the decades. Finding one in pristine condition is far more difficult than you might expect. Collectors place a high value on condition, often using a grading scale to determine how well a coin has been preserved. A 1981 penny in average circulated condition might only be worth a few cents. But in uncirculated condition, where the coin still retains its original shine and sharp details, the value can rise significantly. There are also subtle varieties within the 1981 penny series that add another layer of interest. Some coins feature what collectors call large date and small date variations. These differences are not immediately obvious, but once you know what to look for, they become easier to spot. The shape and spacing of the numbers in the date can slightly vary, and certain versions are more sought after than others. Now let's talk about real-world value. While most 1981 no-mint mark pennies won't make you rich overnight, there have been examples that sold for impressive prices, especially in top condition. Coins graded at the highest levels, such as MS-65 or above, have been known to sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, exceptional specimens with perfect surfaces and strong luster can go even higher at auction. This might not sound like a fortune, but think about it. A coin that was originally worth just 1 cent could now be worth hundreds. That's a powerful reminder that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Of course, with any collectible item, there's always the question of authenticity. How do you know if your 1981 penny is real, or if it's something altered or misleading? The good news is that this coin is relatively straightforward to identify. Start by checking the date. It should clearly read 1981. Next, look just below the date. If there is no mint mark, you're looking at a Philadelphia issue. Then, examine the overall appearance of the coin. Genuine coins will have consistent details, with no strange distortions or unnatural textures. Weight is another important factor. As mentioned earlier, a genuine 1981 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter, it might not be what it claims to be. Using a small digital scale can help confirm this quickly. Also, pay attention to the edges and surfaces. Real coins will show natural wear patterns over time, while altered or counterfeit coins might have unusual marks or inconsistencies. When in doubt, professional coin grading services can provide expert verification. Now here's something many people don't realize. The 1981 penny represents more than just a piece of currency. It's a snapshot of a turning point in economic history. The rising cost of materials forced the United States to rethink how it produced its smallest denomination coin. And within a year, the composition would change forever. That makes the 1981 penny one of the last of its kind. It belongs to a group of coins that still carry a high copper content, linking them to decades of earlier coinage. For collectors, this gives the coin a sense of continuity and historical importance. There are also fun details hidden within the design. For example, the initials VDB appear on the front of the coin, just below Lincoln's shoulder. These letters stand for Victor David Brenner, the artist who designed the original Lincoln cent. His work has remained a part of American currency for over a century, making this one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Another interesting fact is that billions of pennies were produced in 1981, yet many of them have disappeared from circulation. Some were lost, others damaged, and many simply worn down over time. This natural process slowly reduces the number of surviving coins in good condition, which can increase their desirability among collectors. So why do collectors love the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny today? Part of the appeal comes from its accessibility. Unlike rare coins that cost thousands of dollars, this is a coin that almost anyone can find. It invites people into the world of coin collecting without requiring a large investment. At the same time, it offers enough variation and potential value to keep things exciting. Collectors also appreciate the historical context. This coin tells a story about change, about adaptation, and about the balance between tradition and necessity. It marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another in American coin production. And then there's the thrill of the hunt. The idea that a valuable coin could be hiding in plain sight is something that captures the imagination. It turns everyday moments, like checking your change, into small adventures. As you think about the coins you've handled over the years, it's worth asking yourself how many stories you might have missed. How many small pieces of history passed through your hands without a second glance? The 1981 Lincoln penny with no mint mark may not shout for attention, but it quietly holds its place in the timeline of American currency. It reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary meaning. So the next time you come across a penny, don't be so quick to ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date. Notice the details. Because sometimes, the smallest coin can open the door to a much bigger story. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now could secretly be worth far more than just 1 cent? It might sound impossible, but for some collectors, the 1985 D Lincoln penny has become a surprising piece of history that hides more than meets the eye. The 1985 D Mint mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins that most people have seen, spent, or ignored without a second thought. At first glance, it looks like any other modern penny. It carries the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front and a simple design on the back. But behind that everyday appearance lies a story tied to American history, changing technology, and the quiet world of coin collecting where even the smallest details can make a big difference. This coin was minted in 1985 at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small D Mint mark just below the date on the front side. During that time, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies each year to keep up with circulation needs. Pennies were still widely used in daily transactions, and 1985 was no exception. In fact, more than 5.6 billion pennies were struck at the Denver Mint alone that year, making it one of the most heavily produced coins of its time. So if billions were made, how could any of them be valuable? That's where the story gets interesting. To understand the 1985 D penny, you need to know a bit about what changed in the early 1980s. Before 1982, Lincoln pennies were made mostly of copper. But due to rising copper prices, the U.S. Mint switched to a new composition. Starting in 1982, pennies were made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. The 1985 D penny falls into this newer category, meaning it is not a solid copper coin like older pennies. This change in metal is one of the key features of the coin. A standard 1985 D penny weighs about 2.5 grams and has that familiar copper-colored appearance, even though it's mostly zinc underneath. Over time, many of these coins have shown signs of wear, especially if the copper plating gets damaged, revealing the dull gray zinc core beneath. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner. This design has been in use since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase "In God We Trust," while Liberty appears to the left and the year 1985 along with the D mint mark appears to the right. On the back, the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny depiction of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, making this one of the few coins in the world to show the same person on both sides. Now here's where things begin to stand out. While most 1985 D pennies are only worth their face value, certain versions of this coin have caught the attention of collectors due to errors and high-quality condition. One of the most talked about varieties is the 1985 double die error. This happens when the coin is struck with a die that has a slight duplication in the design, creating a noticeable doubling effect on the letters or numbers. On some 1985 pennies, collectors have found doubling in the date or in the word Liberty. These errors are not common, and when found in good condition, they can significantly increase the coin's value. Another interesting variation involves off-center strikes. This happens when the coin blank is not properly aligned during the minting process. As a result, part of the design is missing, and the coin looks slightly shifted. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these coins can be worth far more than a normal penny. There are also coins with die cracks, clipped planchets, or other minting mistakes that make them unique. While these errors may seem like flaws, in the world of coin collecting, they are often seen as rare features that add character and value. Condition plays a huge role as well. A 1985 D penny that has been in circulation for decades will usually show signs of wear, such as scratches, fading, or discoloration. But if you happen to find one in mint state condition, meaning it looks almost as perfect as the day it was made, its value can increase dramatically. Professional grading companies use a scale from 1 to 70 to rate a coin's condition. A coin graded MS65 or higher is considered to be in excellent condition, with strong detail and minimal imperfections. Some high-grade 1985 D pennies have sold for several dollars, and in rare cases, even higher, depending on their quality and any unique features they may have. While you may not see headlines about $1,985 pennies, the truth is that collectors are always searching for the best examples. A perfectly preserved coin with a strong strike, bright luster, and no visible damage can easily stand out among billions of others. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1985 D penny? First, check the date and mint mark carefully. Make sure the D is clearly visible and not altered. Next, look closely at the lettering and numbers using a magnifying glass. If you notice any doubling or unusual shapes, it could be an error worth investigating. Then examine the overall condition of the coin. Is the surface smooth and shiny, or is it worn and dull? Are there any unusual marks or misalignments? Even small details can make a difference. Weight can also be a clue. A standard 1985 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams. If you find one that is significantly heavier or lighter, it could indicate a rare variation or an error, though this is less common. Be cautious of fakes or altered coins. While counterfeit pennies are not as common as fake gold or silver coins, some people do try to modify coins to make them appear more valuable. Always compare your coin to verified examples and consider getting it professionally graded if you believe it might be special. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. Even though the 1985 D penny is mostly zinc, its copper coating gives it the same warm color as older pennies. This design choice was intentional, as the mint wanted to maintain the traditional look of the coin despite the change in materials. Another interesting fact is that billions of these pennies are still out there, circulating quietly in jars, drawers, and pockets across the country. This means that valuable variations could still be waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Collectors love the 1985 D penny not because it is extremely rare in general, but because it represents a moment in time when coin production was evolving. It reflects the shift from copper to zinc, the high-speed manufacturing processes of modern mints, and the small imperfections that can turn an ordinary coin into something special. For beginners, it's also an accessible entry point into coin collecting. You don't need a large budget to start searching for these coins. All it takes is curiosity, patience, and a willingness to look closely at the details most people overlook. In a world where digital payments are becoming more common, coins like the 1985 D penny remind us of a time when physical money played a central role in everyday life. They carry history in a form that you can hold in your hand, examine, and even pass down through generations. And maybe that's the most fascinating part of all. The idea that something so small and ordinary could hold hidden value, waiting for the right person to notice. So the next time you come across a penny, Don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look at the date, the mint mark, and the tiny details that tell its story. Because somewhere among those billions of coins, there could be one that stands out, one that turns a simple 1-cent piece into something far more interesting. And who knows? The next valuable discovery might not come from a rare treasure chest or an auction house. It might come from your own pocket. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1987, something you might have ignored or even spent without thinking, could actually hold surprising value, and in some cases, spark a serious collector's interest? It sounds unlikely, but the truth is, even the most ordinary-looking coins can carry hidden stories and unexpected worth. Today, we are talking about the 1987 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks just like any other penny you've seen 1,000 times. But once you understand what to look for, this small coin becomes a fascinating piece of American history and a potential treasure hiding in plain sight. The 1987 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced back in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 1987, this design had already been in circulation for nearly 80 years, making it one of the most recognizable coins in the United States. The obverse, or front side, features Lincoln's profile, a design created by Victor David Brenner. On the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959 and remained until 2008. Now, when we say no mint mark, we are specifically referring to coins that were produced in Philadelphia. For most of the 20th century, the Philadelphia Mint did not include a mint mark on its coins, which means millions of pennies were released without any letter indicating where they were made. In 1987, this was still the standard. So technically, a 1987 penny without a mint mark is not unusual. It's actually the most common version of that year. But here's where things get interesting. Even though millions were produced, not all 1987 no mint mark pennies are equal. Some stand out because of their condition, their composition, or subtle errors that occurred during the minting process. Let's talk about what makes this coin unique. By 1987, the composition of the penny had already changed. Prior to 1982, pennies were made mostly of copper. But due to rising metal costs, the US Mint switched to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. That means your 1987 penny is actually about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. It still looks like a classic copper coin, but inside, it's very different. The design itself is clean and familiar. Lincoln's face is calm and detailed, facing right. Above his head, you'll see the word Liberty, and to the right, the year 1987. Just below the date, on some coins, you might find a small letter D or S for Denver or San Francisco. But on the no mint mark version, that space is blank. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, with United States of America across the top and 1 cent at the bottom. Now, you might be wondering, if this coin is so common, why would anyone care about it? The answer lies in condition and errors. Coins are graded based on their condition, and the difference between an average coin and a perfect one can be huge. Most 1987 pennies you find in circulation are worn, scratched, or faded. But if you happen to come across one in uncirculated condition, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, it could be worth significantly more than 1 cent. Collectors look for coins with sharp details, bright luster, and no signs of wear. These are often graded on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded MS65 or higher is considered high quality, and anything approaching MS67 or MS68 becomes very rare for a coin like this. In fact, a 1987 no mint mark Lincoln penny in near-perfect condition has been known to sell for several $100s. While that might not sound like life-changing money, it's a massive jump from its face value. And for collectors, finding such a coin in the wild is incredibly exciting. Then there are mint errors. These are mistakes that happen during the production process, and they can turn an ordinary coin into something truly special. For the 1987 penny, some known errors include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, and double die errors, where parts of the design appear duplicated due to a misalignment in the die used to strike the coin. There are also cases of plating errors, where the thin copper layer is incomplete or uneven, exposing the zinc underneath. These coins can have unusual colors or textures, making them stand out immediately. Depending on the severity and uniqueness of the error, such coins can fetch anywhere from a few dollars to several hundred. One of the most fascinating aspects of coin collecting is how small details can make a huge difference. 2 pennies from the same year can look almost identical, yet one might be worth 1 cent while the other could be worth hundreds. It all comes down to condition, rarity, and those tiny imperfections that tell a story. So how can you tell if your 1987 no-mint mark penny is valuable? Start by examining it closely. Look at the surface. Is it shiny and smooth, or dull and worn? Check the edges and the high points of the design, like Lincoln's hair and the steps of the memorial. If these areas are crisp and well-defined, that's a good sign. Next, look for any unusual features. Are there doubled letters or numbers? Is the design off-center? Does the color look different from a typical penny? These could all indicate an error coin. It's also important to weigh the coin if you have a precise scale. A standard 1987 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly different, that could point to a rare variation or an error. Of course, there are also counterfeit coins out there, though they are less common for modern pennies. Still, it's always a good idea to be cautious. Genuine coins will have consistent details and proper weight. If something feels off, it's worth having the coin evaluated by a professional grading service. Now let's look at some real-world examples. While most 1987 no-mint mark pennies sell for just a few cents, high-grade examples have reached impressive prices at auction. Coins graded MS-67 or higher have sold for over $200, and in rare cases, even more. Error coins, depending on their uniqueness, can also bring in significant amounts. These sales show that even a modern coin can have collector value if it meets the right criteria. It's not just about age, it's about quality and rarity. Here's a fun fact. Even though billions of pennies were made in 1987, very few have survived in perfect condition. That's because most were used in everyday transactions, exposed to wear and tear. Finding a pristine example today is like finding a needle in a haystack. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse actually includes a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the structure. It's so small that many people never notice it, but it's there, adding an extra layer of artistry to the coin. Collectors love the 1987 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in general, but because it offers the thrill of the hunt. It's a coin that anyone could find, yet only a few will discover one that stands out. That sense of possibility keeps people searching through rolls of coins, checking their change, and building their collections. There's also a nostalgic element. For many people, pennies like this are a reminder of everyday life, buying candy, saving coins in a jar, or learning about money as a child. Holding one can bring back memories, making it more than just a piece of metal. In today's world, where digital payments are becoming the norm, physical coins are starting to feel like relics of the past. That only adds to their appeal. Coins like the 1987 Lincoln penny are small, tangible pieces of history that you can hold in your hand. And here's the most exciting part. You don't need to be a professional collector to get started. All it takes is a little curiosity and a closer look at the coins you already have. That penny sitting in your pocket or your drawer might not seem like much, but it could be worth more than you think. As we wrap up, think about this. How many times have you seen a penny and ignored it? How many have you spent without a second thought? The 1987 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in the smallest details, waiting to be discovered. So the next time you come across a penny, don't just pass it by. Take a closer look. Because that ordinary coin might just have an extraordinary story to tell. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now could be worth far more than 1 cent? Maybe even hundreds, or in rare cases, thousands of dollars. Most people ignore pennies, but the 1989 Lincoln penny with no mint mark has a story that might make you look twice before spending one ever again. The 1989 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is one of those coins that millions of people have seen, but very few truly understand. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. It's a coin that passed through countless hands in grocery stores, gas stations, and banks. But hidden within this everyday coin is a mix of history, subtle variations, and collector interest that has kept it relevant decades later. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 1989. The United States was nearing the end of the Cold War era. Technology was advancing, and everyday life was slowly changing. Yet one thing remained constant: the production of the Lincoln penny, one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, the Lincoln cent became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. By 1989, the design had already been in use for 80 years. The front, or obverse, still featured Lincoln's profile designed by Victor David Brenner. The back, or reverse, showed the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. This design remained until 2008, making the 1989 penny part of a long, consistent era of American coinage. Now, here's where things get interesting. The phrase "no mint mark" doesn't mean the coin is missing something by accident. It actually tells us where the coin was made. In 1989, pennies were produced at multiple mints, including Philadelphia and Denver. Coins made in Denver carry a small D mint mark, but coins made in Philadelphia traditionally had no mint mark at all. So, a 1989 penny with no mint mark simply means it was minted in Philadelphia. But that doesn't mean it's worthless. In fact, some of these coins can be surprisingly valuable depending on their condition and certain rare variations. Let's talk about what makes this coin unique. The 1989 penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 to reduce costs, replacing the earlier solid copper pennies. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a bright, copper-colored appearance when new. Over time, many of these coins darken or develop spots due to the zinc core reacting with the environment. The design itself is simple but iconic. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1989 on the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands in the center, with United States of America and 1 cent surrounding it. But collectors don't just look at the basic design. They search for small details that most people overlook. One of the most important factors is condition. A 1989 no mint mark penny in circulated condition is usually worth only its face value. But if the coin is in uncirculated condition, meaning it has never been used in everyday transactions and still has its original shine, its value can increase significantly. Now let's dive deeper into the world of errors and varieties, because this is where things can get exciting. Some 1989 pennies were struck with small mistakes during the minting process. These errors can include double dies, off-center strikes, or other irregularities. A double die error occurs when the coin's design is accidentally stamped more than once, slightly offset, creating a noticeable doubling effect on letters or numbers. While major errors from 1989 are not extremely common, they do exist, and when they appear, collectors pay attention. A strong double die or a dramatic minting error can turn a simple penny into a highly sought-after collectible. So how much can a 1989 no mint mark penny actually be worth? For most coins in average condition, the value remains 1 cent. But for coins in brilliant uncirculated condition, the value can range from a few cents to a few dollars. That might not sound impressive, but the real value comes into play with high-grade examples. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin. A 1989 penny graded at MS65 or higher, which means it has a strong strike and minimal imperfections, can sell for $5 to $20 or more depending on its appearance. If a coin reaches MS67 or higher, which is extremely rare, it can sell for over $100. There have even been cases where exceptional examples, especially those with strong luster and no visible flaws, have reached prices closer to $300 or more at auction. These are not common, but they prove that even a modern penny can have real value under the right conditions. Now you might be wondering how to tell if you have one of these valuable coins. The first step is to check the date and mint mark. Look at the front of the coin and confirm it says 1989. Then check under the date. If there is no letter, you have a Philadelphia mint coin. Next, examine the condition. Is the coin shiny? Does it have scratches or discoloration? Coins that look new and untouched are more valuable. If you think your coin is in excellent condition, it may be worth having it graded by a professional service. You should also look closely for errors. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the letters and numbers. Check for doubling, unusual shapes, or anything that looks out of place. Even a small error can increase the coin's value significantly. Another important tip is to be cautious of fakes. While it may sound surprising, even low-value coins can be counterfeited or altered. Some people try to polish coins or modify them to make them appear more valuable. A genuine coin will have a natural look, while altered coins often appear too shiny or have unnatural surfaces. One fun fact about the 1989 penny is that it was produced in massive numbers. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck billions of pennies that year. This is one reason why most 1989 pennies are not rare. However, this also means that finding a high-quality example is more difficult than you might think. When coins are produced in such large quantities, most of them enter circulation and become worn over time. Finding one in near-perfect condition is like finding a needle in a haystack. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial on the back of the coin actually includes a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the building. It's so small that many people never notice it. This makes the Lincoln penny one of the few coins in the world to feature the same person on both sides. Collectors today continue to love the 1989 no-mint mark penny not because it is the rarest coin, but because it represents something bigger. It's a reminder that value can be hidden in plain sight. It shows how everyday objects can become meaningful over time. And for many collectors, it's an entry point into the fascinating world of coin collecting. There's also a sense of nostalgia attached to these coins. People who grew up in the 1980s and 1990s remember using pennies like this every day. Holding one now can feel like holding a small piece of personal history. As time goes on, coins like the 1989 penny may become harder to find in high grades, especially as fewer people pay attention to physical currency. This could increase their appeal among collectors in the future. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for a mint mark. Examine its condition. Because hidden among billions of ordinary coins, there's always a chance you might discover something special. And who knows? That simple 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny you almost overlooked could be the start of your journey into a world where history, value, and curiosity come together in the smallest of places. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1990, something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up, could actually be hiding in your pocket right now, and might be worth far more than just 1 cent? Today, we are talking about the 1990 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks completely ordinary at first glance, yet continues to spark curiosity among collectors and everyday people alike. This is not a flashy gold coin or a rare ancient artifact. It's something millions of Americans used without a second thought. And that's exactly what makes it so interesting. The 1990 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in American history, the Lincoln cent. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, this penny became the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1990, this coin had already been in circulation for more than 80 years, quietly passing from hand to hand across the country. Now here's where things get interesting. When people hear no mint mark, they often assume something is missing, something rare, or even something valuable. But in the case of the 1990 penny, the absence of a mint mark is actually completely normal. Most of these coins were produced at the Philadelphia Mint, and during that time, coins from Philadelphia simply didn't carry a mint mark at all. So, in reality, the majority of 1990 pennies you'll find will have no mint mark. Millions upon millions of them were made. In fact, over 6 billion pennies were struck in Philadelphia alone that year. That means this coin, in its standard form, is incredibly common. But don't click away just yet. Because even among common coins, there are hidden details, tiny variations, and rare conditions that can turn something ordinary into something surprisingly valuable. Let's take a closer look at what makes the 1990 Lincoln penny unique. The coin itself is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 as a cost-saving measure, replacing the older solid copper pennies. So if you're holding a 1990 penny, you're holding a coin that is about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, with the word Liberty to his left and the date 1990 to his right. Above his head is the motto, "In God We Trust." Flip the coin over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny representation of the statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. It's one of the few coins in the world where the same person appears on both sides. Now, while the basic design is standard, collectors are always on the lookout for small differences, known as errors or varieties. And this is where things start to get exciting. Some 1990 pennies have been discovered with what appears to be a no S proof error. These are extremely rare coins that were supposed to be struck at the San Francisco Mint, which typically adds an S mint mark. But in a few cases, proof coins were mistakenly struck without that mint mark. These 1990 no S proof pennies are incredibly valuable and highly sought after by collectors. Only a small number are known to exist, making them one of the most talked about modern coin eras. However, it's important to understand the difference. A regular 1990 penny with no mint mark is common, but a proof coin without the S mint mark is rare. Proof coins are specially made for collectors, with a mirror-like finish and sharp details. They were never meant for circulation. So how can you tell if you have something special? Start by looking at the surface of the coin. A proof coin will have a very shiny, reflective background, almost like a mirror. The design elements will appear frosted, creating a strong contrast. If your coin looks dull or worn, it's almost certainly a regular circulation coin. Next, check the details. Proof coins are struck multiple times to ensure sharpness. If the lines and edges on your coin look crisp and well-defined, that's another sign you might be holding a proof. And of course, if you believe you found a rare error coin, it's always best to have it examined by a professional grading service. Now let's talk about value. A typical 1990 no mint mark Lincoln penny in circulated condition is worth exactly 1 cent. Even in uncirculated condition, it might only be worth a few cents to a collector. But the story changes dramatically when we talk about rare errors or exceptional condition. For example, a 1990 no-S proof penny has sold for thousands of dollars at auction. In some cases, these coins have reached prices of over $3,000, depending on their condition and certification. Even regular 1990 pennies can sometimes surprise you. Coins that are in near-perfect condition, graded highly by professional services, can sell for $10, $20, or even more. It all depends on the quality. Here's something many people don't realize. Condition is everything in coin collecting. Two coins that look similar at first glance can have vastly different values based on tiny details like scratches, color, and wear. Now let's talk about how to spot a fake or misidentified coin. First, be cautious of claims that every no mint mark penny is rare. This is one of the most common misconceptions in coin collecting. As we mentioned earlier, no mint mark for Philadelphia coins in 1990 is completely normal. Second, watch out for altered coins. Some people attempt to remove mint marks from coins to make them appear rare. Under magnification, these alterations often leave visible marks or damage. Third, pay attention to weight and size. A genuine 1990 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it feels unusually heavy or light, it could be counterfeit or damaged. And finally, when in doubt, always seek expert verification. Here's a fun fact that might surprise you. There are billions of 1990 pennies still out there, quietly sitting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks. Most people never take a second look at them. But within that sea of ordinary coins, there's always the possibility, however small, that something rare slipped through. That sense of possibility is what keeps collectors searching. It's not just about money. It's about the thrill of discovery. The idea that history, mistakes, and hidden value can exist in something so small and overlooked. The 1990 Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin in the world, but it represents something powerful. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, you have to look a little closer. Collectors love this coin because it sits right on the edge between common and rare. It's accessible to everyone, yet still holds the potential for something extraordinary. Whether it's a high-grade specimen or a rare proof error, there's always a story behind each coin. And that's really what coin collecting is about. Stories, history, and the quiet excitement of holding something that has traveled through time. So next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a moment. Look at the date. Check for details. Because you never know what you might find. And who knows? That small, copper-colored coin in your hand might just be the start of a much bigger story. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1991, something you might ignore in your pocket right now, could actually be worth far more than 1 cent? Not because it's made of gold, not because it's ancient, but because of tiny details most people never notice. And today, we are uncovering the truth behind the 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks ordinary but hides a story that collectors quietly chase. The 1991 Lincoln penny is one of those coins that almost everyone has seen at some point. It features the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been part of American coinage since 1909. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol of history, strength, and unity. At first glance, nothing about this coin seems special. But that's exactly what makes it so interesting. Now, Let's talk about what no mint mark actually means. In the United States, coins are produced at different mint facilities, and most of them include a small letter on the front to show where they were made. For example, a D means Denver, and an S means San Francisco. But when a coin has no mint mark at all, it typically means it was struck in Philadelphia. That's the case with most 1991 pennies you'll come across. So, does that make it rare? Not exactly. In fact, millions upon millions of 1991 pennies without a mint mark were produced. They were part of everyday circulation, used in transactions across the country. But here's where things start to get interesting. Even though the majority are common, certain versions of this coin can be worth far more than face value, depending on condition, errors, and unique characteristics. To understand why, we need to go back to the early 1990s. This was a time when the US Mint was producing coins in massive quantities to meet demand. The economy was active, cash transactions were common, and pennies were still widely used. The 1991 penny was made primarily from a zinc core with a thin copper coating, a composition that had been introduced in 1982 to reduce production costs. Before that, pennies were mostly solid copper, which made them heavier and more expensive to produce. Because of this change, the 1991 penny has a lighter feel compared to older coins. It weighs about 2.5 grams, and over time, many of these coins have shown signs of wear, corrosion, or damage. That means finding one in excellent condition today is actually harder than you might think. And this brings us to one of the key reasons why some 1991 no mint mark pennies are valuable. Condition matters. A coin that has been preserved in near-perfect shape, with sharp details and minimal wear, can attract serious attention from collectors. These are often graded by professional services, and the higher the grade, the higher the potential value. But condition alone isn't the only factor. Errors play a huge role in turning an ordinary penny into something extraordinary. During the minting process, mistakes can happen. These might include double strikes, off-center designs, or issues with the dies used to stamp the coin. In some cases, these errors create unique variations that collectors are eager to find. For the 1991 penny, one of the most talked about possibilities is the double die effect. This happens when the design is accidentally stamped more than once, slightly misaligned, creating a noticeable doubling in certain areas of the coin. While not extremely common for this specific year, any verified double die example can significantly increase the coin's value. Another interesting possibility is a broad strike error, where the coin is struck without the proper collar, causing it to expand beyond its normal size. These coins look unusual and are instantly recognizable, making them highly collectible. Then there are off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin blank. Depending on how off-center the strike is, and whether the date is still visible, these coins can be worth a surprising amount. Now let's talk about real value. Most 1991 no mint mark pennies in average circulated condition are still worth just 1 cent. But when you move into uncirculated condition, especially coins graded MS65 or higher, the value can rise to several dollars or more. It might not sound like much, but for a coin that started as pocket change, that's already a big jump. However, when you combine high grade with a noticeable error, things change dramatically. Some error coins from this year have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the rarity and demand. In rare cases, exceptionally well-preserved examples with unique characteristics can attract even higher offers from dedicated collectors. So how do you know if you have one of these valuable pennies? The first step is to look closely at the coin. Check the date and confirm it says 1991. Then look under the date to see if there is a mint mark. If there's no letter, it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, examine the condition. Is the coin shiny, with clear details, or is it worn and scratched? The better the condition, the more potential it has. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the lettering and design. Look for any signs of doubling, unusual shapes, or misalignment. Weight can also be a clue. A standard 1991 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly different, it might indicate an error or an unusual composition, which could make it more valuable. Be cautious, though. Not every unusual-looking coin is valuable. Damage from circulation, like scratches or dents, does not increase value. In fact, it usually decreases it. That's why it's important to learn the difference between mint errors and post-mint damage. If you think you've found something special, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. They can confirm whether it's genuine and assign it a grade, which helps determine its market value. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though pennies are often overlooked, they are one of the most collected coins in the United States. The Lincoln penny series, in particular, has a huge following because it spans over a century of history. That means even a modern coin like the 1991 penny has a place in many collections. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design on the back of the coin actually shows a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the building. It's incredibly small, and most people never notice it without magnification. This level of detail adds to the charm and appeal of the coin. Collectors love the 1991 no mint mark penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents the idea that value can be hidden in plain sight. It reminds people that even the most ordinary objects can become special under the right circumstances. There's also something exciting about the hunt. Searching through jars of old coins, checking pocket change, or going through bankrolls in hopes of finding a hidden gem. It's a hobby that combines history, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. And in today's world, where digital payments are becoming more common, physical coins are slowly fading from everyday use. That makes them even more interesting to collectors, who see them as pieces of history worth preserving. So the next time you come across a 1991 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the details. You might just be holding something more valuable than you think. Because in the world of coin collecting, it's not always the oldest or the rarest coin that tells the most interesting story. Sometimes, it's the one you almost ignored. And who knows? The next penny you find could be the one that changes how you see every coin forever. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now could be worth far more than just 1 cent? Not because it's ancient, not because it's made of gold, but because of a tiny detail most people never even notice. Today, we are diving into the story of the 1993 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries hidden layers of history, mystery, and surprising value. The 1993 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States at the Denver Mint. The small D mint mark, located just below the date on the front of the coin, tells us exactly where it was made. Millions of these pennies were struck that year, and most of them are still circulating or sitting forgotten in jars, drawers, and piggy banks. But here's where things get interesting. Not all 1993 D pennies are the same. To understand why this coin matters, we have to go back to its roots. The Lincoln penny itself was first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person, replacing the symbolic designs used before. By 1993, the Lincoln penny had already become one of the most recognized coins in American history. That year, the United States Mint continued its long tradition of producing billions of pennies to meet everyday demand. The early 1990s were a time of high coin production. The economy was active, cash transactions were everywhere, and pennies were essential for pricing and change. In 1993 alone, the Denver Mint produced over 6.5 billion Lincoln pennies. That number might sound massive, and it is, which is why most people assume this coin has no special value. But in the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't always about low mintage. Sometimes, it's about condition, small errors, or unique variations that slip through the cracks. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The front, or obverse, features the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. You'll see the word Liberty to the left, the year 1993 to the right, and the phrase "In God We Trust" across the top. Just beneath the date, that tiny D mint mark confirms it was struck in Denver. On the back, or reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959. Look closely, and you can even see a tiny representation of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial building. It's one of the most detailed designs ever placed on such a small coin. Now here's something many people don't realize. By 1993, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Instead, they were composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982 due to rising copper prices. So while the coin looks like copper, its core is actually zinc. That detail alone affects both its durability and how it ages over time. But what truly makes certain 1993 D pennies stand out are the small imperfections that occurred during the minting process. These are known as error coins, and they are highly sought after by collectors. One of the most notable errors is the double die. This happens when the coin's design is accidentally stamped more than once in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on the letters or numbers. On a 1993D penny, this doubling might appear on the date, the word liberty, or even in God we trust. To the untrained eye, it may look like a shadow or blur, but to collectors, it's a valuable mistake. Another error to look for is an off-center strike. This occurs when the coin blank isn't properly aligned during minting, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted. The more dramatic the misalignment, the more valuable the coin can be. There are also coins with die cracks, where small lines appear on the surface due to stress in the minting equipment. While minor cracks may not add much value, larger or unusual patterns can make a coin more desirable. Then there's the condition factor. Even a perfectly normal 1993D penny can be worth more than face value if it's in exceptional condition. Collectors use a grading system to determine this. Coins that have never been circulated, meaning they show no signs of wear, are called mint state coins. These can have sharp details, bright luster, and no scratches or damage. A 1993D penny in average circulated condition is usually worth just 1 cent. But in uncirculated condition, it might sell for a few dollars. And in high grades, like MS67 or higher, the value can jump significantly. In fact, some top-quality examples have sold for over $100 at auction. That might not sound like life-changing money, but remember, this is a coin most people overlook completely. Now let's talk about how to identify a real and potentially valuable 1993D penny. First, always check the date and mint mark carefully. The D should be clear and properly shaped. Counterfeit coins do exist, although they are less common for modern pennies. Still, it's important to be cautious. Next, examine the coin surface under good lighting. Look for unusual features like doubling, off-center designs, or strange marks that don't look like normal wear. A magnifying glass or coin loop can help you see details more clearly. Weight is another clue. A standard 1993 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it feels significantly heavier or lighter, it could be altered or damaged. Also pay attention to color. Because these coins have a copper coating, they can appear bright red when new, or turn brown over time due to oxidation. Collectors often categorize them as red, red-brown, or brown, with red coins typically being the most valuable. Here's a surprising detail. Some collectors search through thousands of pennies just to find one high-grade example. This process is called coin roll hunting, and it's a popular hobby. Imagine sitting down with a box of pennies from the bank, slowly checking each one, hoping to find that single rare piece hiding in plain sight. Another fun fact is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse design remained in use until 2008. That means the 1993 penny is part of a long-running series that spans nearly 5 decades. For collectors, completing a full set of these coins, especially in high condition, is both a challenge and a passion. So why do collectors love the 1993D penny today? It's not just about the money. It's about the thrill of discovery. It's about finding something valuable in something ordinary. It's about holding a small piece of history that has passed through countless hands, each one adding to its story. This coin represents a moment in time, a snapshot of American currency during the early 1990s. It connects us to everyday life from that era, from buying a soda to making a phone call. And in a world that is quickly moving toward digital payments, coins like this remind us of a more tangible past. There's also a sense of accessibility. Unlike rare gold coins or ancient artifacts, the 1993D penny is something almost anyone can find. You don't need a huge budget to start collecting. Sometimes, all it takes is curiosity and a closer look at the change in your pocket. And that brings us back to the question we started with. Could that penny you've been ignoring actually be worth more than you think? The answer is yes, but only if you know what to look for. So next time you come across a 1993D Lincoln penny, don't just spend it without a second thought. Take a moment. Turn it over in your hand. Look closely at the details. Because hidden within that tiny piece of metal could be a small mistake, a rare condition, or a unique feature that transforms it from ordinary to extraordinary. And who knows, the next time you check your spare change, you might just uncover a story waiting to be told. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1994, something most people wouldn't even pick up off the ground, could quietly hold more value than you ever imagined? Not because it looks different at first glance, but because of what's missing. Today, we are talking about the 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. A coin that millions of people have handled, spent, and ignored. Yet it continues to spark curiosity among collectors and everyday people alike. At first, it sounds confusing. No mint mark? Isn't that normal? And that's exactly where the story begins. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person, and since then, it has become one of the most recognizable coins in circulation. By 1994, the Lincoln penny had already been around for over 80 years. The design on the front, showing Lincoln's profile, was created by Victor David Brenner. On the back, at that time, you would see the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. Now, let's talk about that missing mint mark. In the United States, coins are produced at different mint facilities. The most common ones are Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver usually carry a D mint mark. San Francisco coins often have an S, especially for proof coins. But coins made in Philadelphia, especially pennies before 2017, typically had no mint mark at all. So when you see a 1994 penny without a mint mark, it means it was produced in Philadelphia. That might sound ordinary, and in most cases, it is. Billions of pennies were minted in Philadelphia in 1994. So just having no mint mark doesn't automatically make the coin rare. But here's where things get interesting. Even though the majority of 1994 no mint mark pennies are common, certain versions of this coin can be surprisingly valuable. And the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and one worth hundreds, or even thousands of dollars, often comes down to tiny details most people overlook. Let's break down what this coin is made of. The 1994 Lincoln penny is composed mostly of zinc, about 97.5%, with a thin copper coating making up the remaining 2.5%. This composition was introduced in 1982 as a cost-saving measure when copper prices rose. Before that, pennies were mostly copper. Because of this zinc core, these coins are lighter than older pennies. A standard 1994 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. If you ever come across one that feels heavier or lighter, that could be a clue that something unusual is going on. Now let's talk about the design. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing to the right, along with the word Liberty on the left side and the year 1994 on the right. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase "In God We Trust." On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, with the words United States of America and E Pluribus Unum above it, and 1 cent below. At a glance, everything seems standard. But collectors aren't just looking at the obvious. They're searching for small differences, errors, and rare conditions. One of the key reasons a 1994 no mint mark penny can become valuable is because of mint errors. Mint errors happen during the production process. These can include things like double strikes, off-center strikes, or die errors. For example, a double die error occurs when the coin's design is accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions, creating a blurry or doubled appearance on the letters or numbers. In some rare cases, 1994 pennies have been found with noticeable doubling in the date or lettering. These coins can be worth significantly more than their face value, especially if the error is clear and well preserved. Another type of error involves off-center strikes. This is when the coin isn't properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be missing. Depending on how off-center the coin is, and whether the date is still visible, these coins can attract strong interest from collectors. There are also coins with die cracks or cut errors, where parts of the die used to stamp the coin become damaged. These flaws can leave raised lines or blobs on the coin surface. While small imperfections are common, larger or more dramatic errors can increase a coin's value. But errors aren't the only thing that matters. Condition plays a huge role in determining a coin's worth. Most 1994 pennies you'll find in circulation are worn. They've been used, handled, and passed around for years. But coins that were never circulated, known as uncirculated coins, can be much more valuable. Collectors often grade coins based on their condition, using a scale that ranges from poor to mint state. A 1994 no mint mark penny in average circulated condition might only be worth a few cents. But in mint state condition, especially with a high grade like MS65 or higher, the value can jump significantly. There have been cases where high-grade 1994 pennies have sold for impressive amounts at auctions. For example, a 1994 Lincoln penny in near-perfect condition, graded MS67, has been known to sell for over $100. And in extremely rare cases, coins with exceptional quality or unique features have reached even higher prices. It's not just about age. It's about rarity within condition and uniqueness. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if your 1994 penny is valuable or just another common coin? First, take a close look at the surface. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Check for any unusual features like doubling in the letters or numbers, off-center designs, or strange marks that don't look like normal wear. Next, examine the coin's color. Uncirculated pennies often have a bright, reddish copper color. As they age and are exposed to air and handling, they tend to turn brown. Coins that retain their original red color are usually more desirable to collectors. Also, weigh the coin if possible. A standard 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly different, it could be an error coin or something unusual. Another important step is to avoid cleaning the coin. This might sound surprising, but cleaning can actually reduce a coin's value. Collectors prefer coins in their original condition, even if they look a bit dirty. If you think you've found something special, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. They can authenticate the coin and assign it a grade, which can greatly affect its value in the market. Let's talk about something that surprises a lot of people. Even though billions of 1994 pennies were made, very few survive in perfect condition. That's because pennies are often overlooked. People don't store them carefully. They end up in jars, drawers, or lost entirely. This means that finding a high-grade 1994 penny today is much harder than you might expect. Here's a fun fact. If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the back of the coin, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. It's one of the smallest detailed features ever included on a US coin, and most people never notice it. Another interesting detail is that the 1994 penny represents a time before major design changes. In 2009, the reverse design of the penny was changed to celebrate Lincoln's bicentennial, and in 2010, it was replaced with the Union Shield design. So the 1994 penny is part of the classic Lincoln Memorial era, which many collectors appreciate for its historical consistency. Collectors love coins like the 1994 no mint mark penny not because they are all rare, but because they offer the possibility of discovery. It's the idea that something so ordinary could turn out to be extraordinary. You don't need to be an expert to start looking. You just need curiosity and attention to detail. And that's what makes coin collecting so fascinating. It turns everyday objects into pieces of history. It turns spare change into a potential treasure hunt. So the next time you come across a 1994 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Because hidden in that small, copper-colored coin could be a story, a mistake, or even a value far greater than 1 cent. And once you start noticing these details, you may never look at your pocket change the same way again. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now is worth far more than 1 cent? What if a simple coin from 1998, something millions of people have handled without a second thought, is quietly hiding secrets that only a few collectors truly understand? Today, we are talking about the 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks incredibly common at first glance, yet holds surprising value and fascinating stories beneath its copper surface. The 1998 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person, replacing earlier symbolic designs like Lady Liberty. By 1998, this coin had already been in circulation for nearly 90 years, becoming one of the most familiar objects in everyday American life. Now, when we say no mint mark, many people immediately assume something is missing or rare. But here's where it gets interesting. A 1998 penny without a mint mark was actually struck in Philadelphia. For most of modern U.S. coin history, the Philadelphia Mint did not include a mint mark on pennies. So, technically, a no mint mark 1998 penny is completely normal. Millions upon millions of them were produced and released into circulation. But that doesn't mean all 1998 pennies are the same. In fact, within this seemingly ordinary coin lies a world of small variations, hidden errors, and collector interest that can turn a 1-cent piece into something worth far more. Let's start with the basic features. The 1998 Lincoln penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper plating. This composition was introduced in 1982 to reduce production costs, as copper became more expensive. So even though the coin looks like solid copper, It's actually a lightweight core with a copper shell. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln is facing right, with the word Liberty on the left side and the year 1998 on the right. Above his head is the motto, "In God We Trust." On the back, or reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny depiction of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial, a detail so small that many people never notice it. At first glance, nothing about this coin screams rarity. But collectors don't just look at coins the way most people do. They pay attention to tiny differences, small mistakes, and subtle details that can make one coin stand out from millions of others. One of the most famous varieties related to the 1998 penny is the so-called wide AM reverse. This is where things get exciting. On the reverse of the coin, look at the word America. On most pennies, the letters A and M are very close together, almost touching. This is known as the close AM design. But on some rare 1998 pennies, the A and M are spaced farther apart. This is the wide AM variety. Why does this happen? It comes down to how the dies, or metal stamps used to strike coins, were prepared. The US Mint used slightly different designs for proof coins, which are specially made for collectors, and regular circulation coins. Somehow, a proof-style reverse with the wide AM spacing was accidentally used to strike a small number of regular 1998 pennies. This mistake created a rare variety that collectors are constantly searching for. And here's the key point. Most people never notice this detail. That means valuable wide AM pennies can still be found in everyday circulation, sitting in jars, drawers, or old piggy banks. Now let's talk about value, because this is where curiosity turns into excitement. A normal 1998 penny with no mint mark, in circulated condition, is usually worth exactly 1 cent. Maybe a few cents more if it's in excellent condition. But a 1998 wide AM penny is a completely different story. Depending on its condition, a 1998 wide AM penny can sell for anywhere from $20 to over $500. In some cases, high-grade examples, coins that are nearly perfect, have sold for even more at auction. There are also other errors and variations that can increase the value of a 1998 penny. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, double dies, where parts of the design appear duplicated, and die cracks, which create raised lines on the coin. Each of these errors tells a story about what happened during the minting process. Coins are made at incredibly high speeds, and even a tiny misalignment or flaw can create a unique piece that collectors find fascinating. But here's the challenge. With so many coins in circulation, how can you tell if you have a valuable one? First, check the date and mint mark. For our coin, you're looking for 1998 with no mint mark, which means it was made in Philadelphia. Next, examine the reverse carefully. Look at the word America. Use a magnifying glass if you can. If the A and M are clearly separated, not touching or nearly touching, you may have a wide AM variety. Also, look at the letters FG near the base of the Lincoln Memorial. These are the initials of the designer, Frank Gasparro. On wide AM coins, the spacing and positioning of these letters can appear slightly different compared to standard coins. Condition is also very important. Coins are graded on a scale, with higher grades meaning fewer scratches, better detail, and overall cleaner surfaces. A shiny, uncirculated coin will always be worth more than one that has been heavily used. Of course, with valuable coins, there's always the risk of counterfeits or altered pieces. Some people try to modify coins to make them look like rare varieties. That's why serious collectors often rely on professional grading services to authenticate and evaluate their coins. Now, let's take a step back and look at some fun and surprising details about the 1998 penny. Did you know that billions of pennies were produced in 1998? The US Mint made over 5 billion Lincoln cents that year. That means the chances of finding a rare variety are small, but not impossible. Another interesting fact is that pennies are one of the most collected coins in the world. Because they are so common and inexpensive, they are often the first coins people start collecting. Many experienced collectors began their journey by searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to find something special. And there's something deeply satisfying about that search. It's like a treasure hunt hidden in plain sight. Every coin has the potential to be different, to tell a story, or to reveal a mistake that makes it unique. Collectors love the 1998 penny not because it is rare in general, but because of the possibilities it represents. It reminds us that value is not always obvious. Sometimes, the smallest details make the biggest difference. It also connects us to history in a very personal way. This coin has passed through countless hands over the years. It may have been used to buy a newspaper, dropped into a vending machine, or saved in a jar for decades. Each mark and scratch is part of its journey. And for collectors, that journey is part of the appeal. So why do collectors continue to search for the 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny today? Because it represents opportunity. It's a reminder that valuable discoveries don't always come from rare, ancient artifacts. Sometimes, they come from everyday objects that we overlook. It encourages people to pay attention, to look closer, and to appreciate the details that most people ignore. And let's be honest, there's also the thrill of the hunt. The idea that a coin worth hundreds of dollars could be hiding in your spare change is incredibly exciting. As we come to the end of this story, take a moment to think about the coins you've seen today. How many pennies have passed through your hands without a second glance? How many of them might have held something special? The next time you come across a 1998 penny, don't just toss it aside. Turn it over. Look closely. Check the spacing of the letters. Because in that tiny piece of metal, there could be more than just 1 cent. It could be a story, a mistake, a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. And the question is, will you be the one who finds it? What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now isn't just 1 cent, but a small piece of American history hiding in plain sight? And what if a simple detail, something most people overlook, could turn that ordinary coin into something collectors actually search for? Today, we are talking about the 2003 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks like just another everyday coin. You've probably seen hundreds of them, maybe even spent them without a second thought. But behind its simple design is a story that connects modern America to over a century of coin history, and for some collectors, even small details on this coin can make it worth far more than face value. The 2003 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in United States history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person, replacing the classic symbolic figures like Lady Liberty. By 2003, this design had already been in circulation for nearly a century, making it one of the most recognizable coins ever produced. Now here's where things get interesting. When you hear no mint mark, it might sound like something rare or unusual. But in reality, for the 2003 penny, the absence of a mint mark actually tells you something very specific. It means the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike Denver, which uses a D, or San Francisco, which uses an S, Philadelphia coins often have no mint mark at all. So, a 2003 penny with no mint mark isn't an error, it's simply a Philadelphia issue. In 2003, billions of these pennies were produced. The U.S. Mint struck over 3 billion Lincoln cents at the Philadelphia Mint alone. That means most of these coins are very common, and in circulated condition, they're usually worth exactly 1 cent. But, and this is the part collectors care about, not all coins are created equal, even within the same year and mint. Let's talk about the design. On the front of the coin, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the year 2003. Just below the year, on Philadelphia coins, there is no mint mark. The phrase "In God We Trust" arches across the top. This design, created by Victor David Brenner, has remained largely unchanged since 1909. On the reverse side, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959 to mark Lincoln's 150th birthday. If you look closely, really closely, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. It's one of the smallest detailed features ever included on a U.S. coin. The coin itself is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper plating. This composition has been used since 1982, when rising copper prices forced the U.S. Mint to change materials. So while the coin looks like solid copper, it's actually mostly zinc underneath. Now, you might be wondering, if billions were made, how can any 2003 no mint mark penny be valuable? The answer lies in condition and errors. Condition is everything in coin collecting. A 2003 penny that has been in circulation, scratched, worn, or discolored, is usually worth face value. But a coin that has never been used, known as uncirculated, can be worth more. And if that coin is graded at a very high level, like MS67 or higher, it can attract serious attention from collectors. Coins graded MS68 or better are extremely rare for modern pennies. These are coins with almost perfect surfaces, strong luster, and no visible marks. Finding one in circulation is incredibly unlikely, which is why collectors are willing to pay a premium. Then there are mint errors. These are the real treasures hidden among ordinary coins. In 2003 pennies, collectors have reported several types of errors. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, double dies, where parts of the design appear doubled, and die cracks, which create raised lines on the surface of the coin. A 2003 penny with a noticeable error can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to over $100, depending on the type and severity of the mistake. For example, a well-defined double die error can significantly increase the coin's value, especially if it's in excellent condition. There have even been auction examples where high-grade 2003 pennies have sold for surprising amounts. While most won't reach extreme prices, a certified MS67 or MS68 coin can sell for anywhere between $20 to $100 or more, depending on demand. Error coins can sometimes go even higher, especially if they are unique or visually striking. So how can you tell if your 2003 no mint mark penny is worth more than 1 cent? Start by checking the condition. Look at the surface under good lighting. Is it shiny? Are there scratches or dull spots? The cleaner and more flawless it looks, the better. Next, examine the details. Look closely at the lettering and Lincoln's face. If you notice doubling, unusual lines, or anything that looks off, you might have an error coin. Weight can also be a clue. A standard 2003 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly different, that could indicate a minting issue or even a counterfeit. Speaking of counterfeits, while fake pennies are not very common due to their low value, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify coins to make them appear like error coins. For example, they might scrape or reshape parts of the design. That's why it's important to look for natural patterns. Real mint errors happen during production and usually have a consistent, authentic look. If you believe you have something special, consider having the coin professionally graded by a reputable service. This not only confirms authenticity but also assigns a condition grade, which can greatly influence its value. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though the Lincoln Memorial design was used for decades, it was replaced just a few years after 2003. In 2009, the US Mint introduced a special series of reverse designs to celebrate Lincoln's 200th birthday. Then in 2010, the reverse changed permanently to the Union Shield design. That means the 2003 penny is part of the final stretch of the Lincoln Memorial era. Another interesting detail is how many people overlook these coins. Because they are so common, most people don't even think to check them. That's exactly why collectors keep searching. The idea that something valuable could be hiding in everyday change is part of what makes coin collecting so exciting. Collectors also love the 2003 penny because it represents modern history. It's a coin from the early 2000s, a time when the world was rapidly changing, yet the design still connects back to 1909. It's a bridge between past and present, tradition and modern production. There's also a psychological element. Finding value in something so small and ordinary feels rewarding. It turns everyday objects into a kind of treasure hunt. And for many collectors, the journey of searching is just as exciting as the discovery itself. Even if your 2003 no mint mark penny isn't worth a fortune, it still has a place in a collection. Many collectors build complete sets by year and mint mark, and every coin plays a role. A well-preserved 2003 penny can still be a valuable addition, especially as time passes and fewer high-quality examples remain. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date, the condition, and the details. That simple coin might not change your life overnight, but it could open the door to a fascinating hobby, or even lead to a surprising discovery. Because in the world of coin collecting, it's never just about money. It's about history, curiosity, and the thrill of finding something special where no one else thought to look. And who knows, the next penny you find might be the one that everyone else missed. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now could be worth far more than just 1 cent, and you didn't even realize it? That's exactly why collectors are paying attention to the 2004 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks completely normal at first glance, yet hides details that many people overlook every single day. The 2004 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in American history, the Lincoln cent. First introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, this coin has become one of the most recognized pieces of currency in the United States. By 2004, the design had already been in circulation for nearly a century, making it familiar to almost everyone. But even familiar coins can carry unexpected stories and value. When people hear "no mint mark," they often assume something is missing or rare by default. But here's where things get interesting. In 2004, pennies were mainly produced at two major U.S. mint locations, Philadelphia and Denver. Coins from Denver carry a small D mint mark under the date, while coins from Philadelphia typically have no mint mark at all. So technically, a 2004 penny with no mint mark isn't an error. It simply means it was struck in Philadelphia. But don't click away just yet, because this is where the deeper story begins. The year 2004 wasn't just another routine year for pennies. It was actually part of a special series known as the Westward Journey nickels, but for pennies, it remained part of the traditional Lincoln Memorial design era, which lasted from 1959 to 2008. That means your 2004 penny still features Abraham Lincoln on the front, designed by Victor David Brenner, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, designed by Frank Gasparo. Even though millions, actually billions, of these pennies were produced, collectors still search through them carefully. Why? Because within those massive numbers, there are small variations, rare conditions, and error coins that can turn an ordinary penny into something valuable. Let's talk about what makes the 2004 no mint mark penny stand out. First, the composition. Like most modern pennies after 1982, the 2004 version is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating. This gives it that familiar copper color, but underneath, it's mostly zinc. That might sound cheap, and it is, but the condition of the coin is what truly matters. A 2004 penny that has been circulating for years will likely show wear, scratches, and discoloration. But if you happen to find one in uncirculated condition, meaning it looks almost brand new, with its original shine and no visible damage, its value can increase significantly. Now here's where collectors get really excited. Errors. Even though a standard 2004 no mint mark penny isn't rare by itself, certain error versions can be surprisingly valuable. For example, double die errors, where the design appears slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process, can attract strong interest. These are not always obvious to the naked eye, but under magnification, you might notice doubling in the letters or numbers. Another type of error is an off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not properly aligned during minting, causing part of the design to be missing. The more dramatic the error, the more collectors are willing to pay. There are also die cracks, where small raised lines appear on the coin due to cracks in the minting die. While minor cracks are common, more noticeable ones can add collectible appeal. So while billions of 2004 pennies exist, only a small percentage have these unique features, and that's where value starts to build. Now let's talk real numbers. A regular 2004 no mint mark penny in average circulated condition is usually worth exactly 1 cent. Not very exciting. But if you find one in brilliant uncirculated condition, it could be worth anywhere from a few cents to a couple of dollars, depending on its quality. However, if you discover an error coin, the story changes completely. Some 2004 penny error coins have sold for anywhere between $20 to over $100, depending on the type and visibility of the error. In rare cases, exceptional examples in top condition have reached even higher prices among dedicated collectors. And here's the part that keeps people searching. Most of these valuable coins were not found in collections. They were found in everyday change. Imagine that. A coin you might receive from a store, or find in an old jar at home, could quietly hold hidden value. But how do you know if your 2004 penny is worth more than face value? Start by looking closely at the date. Make sure it clearly reads 2004. Then check under the date. If there's no letter, that means it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, examine the coin's condition. Is it shiny, with sharp details? Or is it worn and faded? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. After that, look for anything unusual. Does the lettering look doubled? Is part of the design missing or off-center? Are there raised lines or strange marks that don't look like damage? These could be signs of mint errors. If you suspect something special, using a magnifying glass or even a phone camera zoom can help you see the details more clearly. One important thing to remember is the difference between damage and error. Damage happens after the coin leaves the mint, like scratches or dents. Errors happen during the minting process, and they usually have a more uniform, intentional look, even if they're technically mistakes. Now let's clear up another common question. Can these coins be faked? Technically, yes, but it's not very common for low-value coins like modern pennies. Most fakes are made for higher-value coins like rare silver dollars or gold coins. However, altered coins do exist. For example, someone might try to create a fake error by damaging a coin to make it look unusual. That's why it's important to study real error examples and compare carefully. If you ever find a coin you believe is valuable, it's a good idea to have it checked by a professional coin grading service. They can confirm whether it's authentic and give it an official grade, which can increase its value in the collector market. Here's a fun detail many people don't notice. On the back of the 2004 penny, if you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial, you can actually see a tiny image of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the building. It's one of the smallest details ever included on a US coin, and most people never spot it unless they look very carefully. Another interesting fact is that even though pennies cost more to produce than their face value, they continue to be made because of their role in everyday transactions and pricing. That means coins like the 2004 penny are still part of daily life, even as digital payments become more common. So why do collectors still care about a coin like this? It comes down to the thrill of discovery. The idea that something ordinary can become extraordinary with just a small detail is what drives coin collecting. It's not just about money. It's about history, craftsmanship, and the excitement of finding something rare where others see nothing special. The 2004 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny represents that idea perfectly. It's a coin that blends into the background, yet holds the possibility of hidden value. It reminds collectors that rarity isn't always about age. Sometimes, it's about condition, errors, and attention to detail. Even today, people search through rolls of pennies from banks, hoping to find that one unusual coin. It's like a treasure hunt that anyone can join. No special tools required, just patience and curiosity. And that's what makes this coin so fascinating. So the next time you get a handful of change, don't ignore those pennies. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for a mint mark. Study the details. Because hidden among those ordinary coins, there could be a 2004 Lincoln penny quietly waiting to surprise you. And who knows, the next valuable coin might already be in your pocket, just waiting to be noticed. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now could be worth far more than just 1 cent? What if a coin most people ignore every day is quietly hiding secrets that only a few collectors truly understand? Today, we are diving into one of those coins, the 2006 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, and uncovering why this seemingly simple coin continues to spark curiosity, excitement, and even real value among collectors. The 2006 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint in Denver. The D-Mint mark, located just below the year on the front of the coin, tells you exactly where it was made. At first glance, it looks just like any other modern penny. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been in use since 1909, and on the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was used on pennies from 1959 all the way through 2008. This coin may seem ordinary, but like many coins in American history, its true story goes deeper than its surface. To understand the importance of the 2006 D penny, we need to take a quick look at the history behind it. The Lincoln penny itself was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first US coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic image. That decision changed American coinage forever. By 2006, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for nearly a century. The design had become iconic. The year 2006 falls into what collectors often call the modern era of pennies, a time when coins were mass-produced in huge quantities. The Denver Mint alone struck billions of pennies that year. Because of that, most people assume coins like the 2006 D penny are not worth more than face value. But that assumption doesn't always hold true. Let's talk about what makes this coin special. First, the composition. By 2006, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Instead, they were made of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. This change actually happened back in 1982 due to rising copper prices. So while the coin looks like copper, it's mostly zinc underneath. The design is another important feature. On the front, You see Abraham Lincoln facing right, along with the words "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 2006 to the right. Just below the year, you'll find that small but important D mint mark. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. That level of detail is something many people never notice. Now here's where things start to get interesting. Even though billions of these coins were produced, not all 2006 D pennies are created equal. Some of them have errors. And in the world of coin collecting, errors can mean value. One of the most talked about possibilities with modern pennies like the 2006 D is the presence of minting errors. These can include things like double dies, where the design appears slightly duplicated, off-center strikes, where the coin design is not properly aligned, or die cracks, which create raised lines on the coin surface. While major, dramatic errors are rare, even minor ones can attract collectors. A 2006 D penny with a noticeable error can sell for several dollars, sometimes even more depending on the uniqueness and condition of the coin. Condition plays a huge role in value. Most pennies in circulation are worn, scratched, and dull. But if you happen to find a 2006 D penny in near-perfect condition, something collectors call mint state, it can be worth significantly more than 1 cent. There have been examples of high-grade 2006 D pennies selling for several dollars to even tens of dollars when professionally graded. That might not sound like life-changing money, but it's a huge jump from a single cent. Now imagine finding a rare error on top of that condition. That's where things get even more exciting. There are also special varieties that collectors keep an eye out for. Sometimes, subtle differences in the design or striking process can create coins that stand out from the rest. These differences are not always obvious, which makes the hunt even more thrilling. So how can you tell if your 2006 D penny is valuable? Start by checking the mint mark. Make sure the D is clearly visible. Then, look closely at the coin surface. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Check for doubling in the letters or numbers. Look for unusual lines, misalignment, or anything that seems off. Next, examine the condition. Is the coin shiny? Are the details sharp? Or is it worn down and dull? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. Also, weigh the coin if possible. A standard modern penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly off, that could be a sign of something unusual, though this is less common. Be cautious of fakes. While it might sound surprising, even pennies can be altered or misrepresented. Some people try to modify coins to make them look like rare errors. That's why it's important to compare your coin with verified examples or have it checked by a professional grading service if you think it's something special. One interesting fact about the 2006 D penny is just how overlooked it is. Because it's so modern, many collectors ignore it in favor of older coins. But that creates an opportunity. Coins that are ignored today can become highly sought after in the future, especially as high-quality examples become harder to find. Another surprising detail is how many people never look at their change. Every day, millions of coins pass through hands without a second thought. Hidden among them could be a coin with a small flaw or exceptional condition that makes it stand out. Collectors love coins like the 2006 D penny for a simple reason: potential. It represents the idea that treasure doesn't always come from the distant past. Sometimes, it's right in front of you. There's also a sense of connection. Holding a coin like this is like holding a tiny piece of history. It represents a specific year, a moment in time, and the ongoing story of American currency. For beginners, the 2006 D penny is a great entry point into coin collecting. It's easy to find, affordable, and full of learning opportunities. You can practice identifying mint marks, spotting errors, and understanding grading, all with a coin that costs almost nothing to obtain. For experienced collectors, it's about the challenge. Finding a perfect example or a rare error in such a common coin is like finding a needle in a haystack. It requires patience, attention to detail, and a bit of luck. And that's what makes coin collecting so fascinating. It's not just about money. It's about discovery. So the next time you get change back from a store, take a moment. Look at those pennies. Check the dates. Look for that small D mint mark. Because among those ordinary coins, there could be something worth far more than you expect. The 2006 D Lincoln penny might not seem special at first glance. But as you've seen, it carries a story, a history, and a hidden potential that continues to capture the interest of collectors. And here's the real question: how many valuable coins have already passed through your hands without you even noticing?